Hello there everybody, welcome to this week's edition of The Verdict. Plenty of good stuff to go out courtesy of Future Champions Weekend at Newmarket, and principally we're going to look at some very good two-year-old performances and analyse them, and we've also got a race at York to have a look at as well. Let's go to Newmarket then first up and start with older horses in the Challenge Stakes. 7 furlongs was the trip here, and Suhail sent off the favourite at 3-1. Quite strong in the market. Chindit was 7-2, 9-2 Double or Bubble, Dubai 17-2, along with Thanks 11-1, and bigger the rest. And with all these good two-year-olds about, this performance might just have gone under the radar somewhat from Suhail, a 4-year-old trained by Charlie Appleby, and William Buick was on board. And this, on the clock, was a sensational performance from this horse. And the thing about Suhail is he doesn't want to get into a war. He likes to have things his own way. When he's held up, he can be a bit keen, and when he has to go and chase and catch other horses, he finds it all a bit too much. He doesn't like to be eyeballed. So sensibly, on a track, the Rolling Mile, that suits front runners, Connections decided to let him bowl along. And boy, did he fly along in front. The course track sections for this race were sensational. And I don't think there's many horses around in the world that would have caught him from the back if they'd been held up in behind him, because he flew through the final 3 furlongs in 34.83. That is going some. If you look at 12-second furlongs as perhaps being a benchmark, maybe just a bit less than that over this trip, well, that would get you to 36 seconds. Well, he's 34.83. Impossible to run down when he's going that fast through the final 3 furlongs. Individually, the furlongs were pretty quick. The 5th furlong, 11.19. That is going some. And the 6th furlong, 11.24, just to back that up. There is no way he could be run down. He was loose and lonely on the lead, and under a brilliant front-running ride from Will Buick, he is geared down in the closing stages to easily beat With Thanks and Chindit back in 3rd place, with Safe Voyage rounding out 4th. But nothing got anywhere near this winner, who was very sensibly ridden by William Buick. Connections have decided they'll just let him go and let him bowl along. And that is the sort of scenario that really suits him, because he doesn't think he's in a race. He's not in a war. He's not being eyeballed. Nothing sitting on his girth pressing him. He doesn't have to chase horses. He doesn't have to look for a gap. He can do just what he wants. And of course, that run style is particularly well suited to this track, where front runners usually dominate. And this really was an eye-catching performance. It produced a very good time form speed figure. And well, will he ever get this scenario again? Who knows? But on this day, this was one of the best performances we have seen at Newmarket for a while. Sensational stuff from Suhail. He is a very fast horse. Let's sum up what he did out there on the Rolling Mile, thrashing his opponents with ease. He was seen to best effect, given the ride that he got from Will Buick, straight to the front at a track that favours front runners. So when you look at the performance, just temper it with those points. What else have we got? Well, it was a sensible decision. They made a tactical decision to change the way they ride Suhail, and they took him straight to the front, and it was a very well thought out plan from the Appleby team. Well judged ride from William Buick, finishing speed percentage 103.72, so he's just finished off 3.72% through the last 3 furlongs, quicker than he ran the rest of the race. So it was well judged by Buick, but that last 3 furlongs, sensational, 34.83. And if you go to the course track sectionals on the Racing TV website, look at this race, look at what every other horse achieved through the final 3 furlongs. You'll see the final 3 furlong column, nothing was anywhere near as quick as that. Furlong 5, 11.19. Furlong 6, 11.24. He was impossible to catch, given that he was 2 or 3 lengths clear when he was firing those furlongs. Nothing was going to run him down. He may always be best, however, when he does get his own way out in front, and when he's out of the heat of a battle. Sometimes he's looked a little bit quirky when he's been asked to go and chase horses. Perhaps the Jebel Hatter, a classic example of that, when he finished 3rd at Meydan at the Carnival last time around, and then he disappointed then in the duty free after that. So he can look quirky when he's trying to run horses down, but he didn't look quirky there because everything went his way. So where next, we ask? Well, he's going to be a tough horse to place, I think. It's possible that they'll go to Dubai and perhaps go down the duty free route once again, but he's a very fast horse. He might always be best at round about a mile, the duty free being over 9 furlongs. But whatever you think about Al Suhail, he's difficult to catch right, but boy was he good at the weekend. So I think we've seen what was the best older horse performance at Newmarket over the weekend in the shape of Al Suhail. We're now going to concentrate on the 2-year-olds, and I think we saw 3 top-class performances. We're going to start with the Fillies, the Bet365 Fillies Mile. It's Group 1, of course, and Inspiral was 8-11, Mise en Scene 15-2, along with Wild Beauty, Concert Hall 17-2. A bit of money for Prosperous Voyage, 16s from 22-1. But it was Inspiral who did the business, and in a pretty impressive fashion for the Gosden team and Frankie Dettori. She jumped out of stall number 8, and she's in the Cheveley Park colours, easy to spot, and she'll race towards the middle of the track. She was taken along by Cachet in those high clear colours. There she is. I'll just identify her. She's just sat there at this stage, and Frankie's just going to look to get in here, just get in behind and try and get a little bit of cover, because she can be keen in her races. She's got plenty of speed and she can just do a little bit too much. There he is, look. He didn't want to be in that gap. He didn't want to be there. He just wanted to be in behind. That gap there was no good to him. If he'd sat in there, she'd have been very keen with him, but he's got her nicely settled and in behind and got a good lead. And it was just a question of how long Cachet could take her along for. Well, long enough was the answer to that. This was an evenly run race, producing a good time. The final time was 1:38.44, and the finishing speed percentage of 101.86 is just about what you'd expect, just about spot on. So they've gone a good even gallop, which always begets a good time. 2 groups at this stage, and I'm going to upgrade Inspiral's performance here, because I think really you wanted to be over against that far rail where Al Suhail raced. So she's racing away from the best part of the track at this stage. When she comes to challenge, she does drift across a little bit and eventually perhaps finds the slightly better ground on the far side. Now Frankie's edged her out. You can see Cachet's beginning to come under pressure, and she cruises up here and makes an impressive move into the race. The 5th furlong, 11.62 according to the course track sectionals. The 6th furlong, 11.41. And firing those 2 sectionals takes her to the front, and thereafter she is not for catching. She keeps on very well. To beat Prosperous Voyage, who was nibbled at big prices, she's over on the far side against the rail. She runs well. Back in 3rd, Cachet boxing on, and Mise en Scene caught the eye a little bit, running on from the back in the Qatar Racing colours, just there nabbing 4th place right on in the closing stages. But that's a good performance from Inspiral. 6th furlong of 11.41 really did catch the eye, and that put the race to bed, and she was always going to win thereafter. She drifted across and perhaps got on the slightly better ground in the closing stages, but this really was a performance of a filly who deserves to be at the head of the 1,000 guineas market, and she currently trades at 3-1 for that. I think that's fair enough given what we've seen from her so far in her career. She was quite impressive at Doncaster prior to this, and now the Group 1's in the bag with the Fillies Mile. She will be now put under wraps, I think, until the spring, and maybe then a Guineas trial and then the Guineas itself, but she was very impressive indeed. So what can we make of this overall? I think it's pretty strong form. I think it's a very good performance from a filly that deserves to be the 3-1 favourite for the Guineas. It was top class from her. She has got a bright turn of foot, and that's how she won this race, by quickening up. She did drift a bit to her right in the closing stage, which was slightly worrying. Good final time, 1:38.44. That's because they went a good even gallop. There was no messing about. It wasn't a crawl and quicken race. They didn't go too hard early on. Finishing speed percentages of just about what you would expect to get a good time, 101.86. I'm going to upgrade the winner a little bit. Raced past halfway on unfavourable part of the track towards the middle. Frankie wanted to get a lead. Cachet did the job, and then when Cachet came under pressure, he was able to angle out and send his filly on, although she did drift in the closing stages. She was just too quick. Those 2 furlongs that she fired, putting the race to bed. And they were pretty good furlongs, 11.62 and 11.41. And that's what took her clear of the field. To train on or off next year? I think it's quite an interesting question as far as she's concerned, because there's temperament on the dam side of the pedigree. The dam has produced at least one temperamental performer, and the dam, although she was very useful, she too was a little bit temperamental. So it's going to be interesting what Jonathan Thady Gosden do with Inspiral, just to keep her sweet. I mean, she's clearly very good and she's the best 2-year-old filly around, but there's just that slight temperament concern, and she's shown a little bit of that by pulling quite hard in previous races. Now, Racing TV Tracker put Concert Hall in for just one reason alone. Mother Earth, Love, Snowfall and Magical. They're not bad, are they? They were all beaten in the Fillies Mile. Every single one of them got beat in the Fillies Mile. Aidan this time around chose to run Concert Hall, and for that reason alone I think that filly deserves to be in your Racing TV Tracker. She'll have to come on a bit if she'll ever beat Inspiral. Now on the verdict, let's ask a question. Who is going to be the better Guineas prospect, Coroebus or Native Trail? They both won at Newmarket over the weekend, and we'll look at them in action now, starting with Coroebus first up in the Emirates Autumn Stakes. Of course, they went a mile here. It was a Group 3, and Coroebus was the 4-5 favourite. Dubai Poet was next in at 13-2, and Imperial Fighter was a 7-1 shot in a race that looked to be pretty good on paper, and it was Coroebus, the odds-on favourite, who got the job done. He jumped from stall 11, so he's right towards the stand side, and he's dropped out in the early stages, but comes with a tremendous run to put this race to bed in decisive fashion. Now, if I take you back to the Royal Lodge, he would have won that race if his challenge had been delayed somewhat. And you remember that he shot clear of the field and then got tired, and a target on his back, and he was collared close home. So on this occasion, William Buick was anxious to anchor him, ride him with patience and bring him with a well-timed late challenge. And I think he perhaps surprised William with how quickly he picked up. He quickened up really smartly through the 7th furlong, firing 11.25, and that's what took him to the front, and he was never going to be caught thereafter. He is quite simply a 2-year-old miler with a bright turn of foot. He's quite a fast horse. This is not really how you want to ride horses on the Rowley Mile, because they normally they don't stop out in front. But this fellow was able to quicken up, and it was way too good for his rivals. A good overall time, 1:38.65, but it's this burst of speed that marks him out as being very good indeed. They're all under pressure towards the far side, and he rolls on stand side, he quickens up, and this time the challenge that he makes has been timed to perfection by William Buick. They're getting to know this horse better. They know what makes him tick. They know how to deliver him, and he easily beats Imperial Fighter, and Dubai Poet was back in 3rd place, just boxing on for 3rd. But he was really impressive there to my eye. And you look at the course track sections on the Racing TV website, you'll see just how well he quickened up in the closing stages. There was nothing with him. He was on a bit of a solo, a bit of a time trial towards the stand side, not quite Al Suhail-like, but he had nothing to go with. Nothing went with him. Nothing could tow him for long enough. Buick held on to him as long as he dare, and then he utilised this sharp turn of foot that Coroebus has got. And remember that this is over a mile, so the Guineas is going to be no problem. The track is going to be no problem for him whatsoever. And he's by Dubai, and they tend to get better with age and with racing too. So you'd like to think that there's a fair bit more improvement to come from Coroebus going forward. Whether we see him again, I don't know. We might see him one more time, but it's more likely that they'll just put him away and look after him and bring him back next season, possibly for a trial. But impressive, wasn't he? I thought he was really good. Let's sum up what he actually achieved out there on the Rowley Mile. Well, it was an even gallop that he set, a good overall time of 1:38.65. I think you'd say that that was a pretty good time. If you look at all of the times on the day, that was pretty quick. But it was his turn of foot that he showed that really set him apart from his rivals. That 7th furlong of 11.25 being the deciding factor, really. If you look at the other sectionals of the horses in the race, nothing could go anywhere near as quick as that. He's a live Guineas prospect. I really think he is, because he'll definitely stay a mile. His temperament looks rock solid. He looks bomb-proof. He's got a turn of foot. He travels well. He settles. He likes the track, 6-1. That's fair enough, really, for the 2,000 Guineas. Now Inspiral, perhaps we can compare him a little bit with Inspiral, who won the Fillies mile. She was a little bit quicker over the same trip on very similar ground. And that really does advertise her talent. So if you're impressed with Coroebus, you've got to be impressed with Inspiral as well. He was unlucky in the Royal Lodge, I made reference to that, but his sharp acceleration this time was used at the right point. William sat and sat and sat as long as he dare, and you could see him in the 2,000 guineas just being smuggled into the race and then quickening up as he comes out of the dip. He really is a bright prospect for that race. Vertum Futurity is a possibility. I wouldn't have thought so. Charlie Appleby was interviewed by Nick Luck on Sunday, and he sort of didn't say that he wanted to run him again, really. I think they'll put him away for the Guineas, and we'll perhaps see him in a trial in the spring. But Coroebus, there he is walking around with the winner's rug on. I think 6-1 for the 2,000 Guineas is very fair indeed. Will he be able to beat Native Trail? We'll have a look at that in a minute. So Coroebus has marked himself out as being a leading candidate for the 2,000 guineas next season from the Charlie Appleby yard, and they've also got Native Trail, who won the Dewhurst over 7 furlongs on Saturday. He went off a short price favourite. He was entitled to be short given what he'd achieved thus far. 6-5 on. Straight answer was 6-1. He proved to be a disappointment. Bayside Boy 9-1. Go Bears Go 11s 12-1 and bigger the rest. I think it was a race with plenty of strength in depth, and the Native Trail, there is no doubt about it, was very impressive indeed. Let's send them on their way here. And Native Trail, he's just dropped out mid-div by William Buick, just allowed to travel away. He doesn't travel quite as strongly as Coroebus does. At various points he just has to be niggled along, but he was certainly able to come home really strongly over the 7 furlongs here, giving plenty of hope that a mile will be okay for him next season. What did we have here? Well, we had an evenly run race. Finishing speed percentage was 103.98%. So they came home just over 3% quicker in the last 3 furlongs than they did earlier in the earlier part of the race. There he is. He's swinging away just in behind. I wouldn't say the pace was overly strong. The runner-up is in front at this stage and has run really well, Dubarwi Legend. Bayside Boy was third. He's second last at the moment in the red sleeves and the yellow cap. And Berkshire Shadow, late headway from Berkshire Shadow out wide, red cap and white on the shoulders there. He came home quite strongly for 4th place. Here's Native Trail. Look, he's not even got to the 2 pole and he's been niggled along, partly because Will Buick's looking for a little bit of running room. He was going to go for the rail and he thought, well, I might just get cut off at the pass here by Dubarwi Legend, so he did the right thing and switched out. And Native Trail has got plenty of speed. The penultimate furlong, the 6th furlong, according to Course Track Sectionals, 11.08. Wow. He's got loads of toe, this fellow, and although he perhaps races a little bit lazily at times, comes off the bridle quite early in a race, he really does have a very good turn of foot, and he's definitely a fast horse. So is Coroebus though. So how do we compare them? Well, what we know about Coroebus is he's going to stay a mile and he might stay a little bit further. On pedigree for this horse, Native Trail, the mile is a bit of a doubt. His run style and the way he hits the line here suggests he'll be all right at a mile. But on his pedigree, he's by Oasis Dream out of an Observatory mare. There's plenty of speed there. A mile will be as far as he wants to go. He has got a good turn of foot. That furlong that I highlighted is very quick indeed, 11.08. So he's a really quick horse. The mile in a strongly run race would just be a slight question mark. And a horse like Coroebus might be too strong for him at that sort of trip. But there's no doubt about it. This is the best 2-year-old we have seen so far this season. He will be the leading juvenile. So let's sum up what we saw in the Dewhurst. It was an evenly run race. It produced a pretty good time. And it also produced a finishing speed percentage of 103.98. So he quickened up quite well in the closing stages. That's the 6th furlong. That's just after he was switched from in behind Dubarwi Legend. Switched and then he quickened and he levelled out with an 11.08 6th furlong. 7-2 favourite for the 2,000 guineas. That's probably fair enough on all that he's achieved in his career. He won with a little bit in hand. But compared to the 6-1 that Coroebus trades at the moment, I think I'd be on Coroebus at those prices. Plenty of speed in his pedigree. Staying a mile is not a given on pedigree. Just pure pedigree analysis tells you that he should stay a mile, but it's not a given whatsoever. His run style suggests he will. So there we go. That's the clash. Coroebus versus Native Trail. What do you think? A tough call, but just over the trip in a strongly run mile race next season, I think Coroebus will be the one for me. The last 3 winners of the Dewhurst, of course, have gone on to win a Group 1 as a 3-year-old, and I've got absolutely no doubt that Native Trail will make it 4 on the bounce for the Dewhurst, which is always a very good guide to the 2,000 guineas. That horse there, having a drink, a well-earned drink after winning the Dewhurst, is the best 2-year-old we've seen this season. The final race that we're going to look at Newmarket now, and we're back to the older horses for this, and the success of Mostahdaf in the final contest on Saturday afternoon. This is a steadily improving horse. It was the Group 3 Darley Stakes, 9 furlongs the trip. 9 to 4 was Barney Roy, returning to action. Barney Roy off a long layoff, and he was really well backed. Mostahdaf was 3 to 1. Bedouin Story, the Cambridgeshire winner, a drifter, 100 to 30. Khartoum, 12s, 14s and bigger, the rest of them. So Barney Roy, the well backed favourite, but he didn't win. It was Mostahdaf who got the job done yet again. He's a prolific winner, this horse, and he beat Bedouin Story, Finest Sand and Barney Roy back in 4th place. Okay, he jumps out of stall number 2 over on the far side. And the early stages of this race, what we saw was they went very steady. They crawled early on according to the course track sectionals, and this turned up to be a bit of a burn up through the final 3 furlongs. 2 horses I think were inconvenienced. You can see Barney Roy pulling quite hard in there in the Godolphin blue. There's Bedouin Story, he's too far back, and you could perhaps argue that Khartoum as well was too far back, although he didn't run particularly well, certainly not as well as a Bedouin Story, who came home quite strongly. But you remember Bedouin Story in the Cambridgeshire, given a good ride by Jamie Spencer off a strong pace. He was held up last and he flew through the field and came home really strongly, but he needs a good pace to go at, and he just didn't get it here at all. Barney Roy shaped okay off that long layoff, although he was a bit keen and he could have done with a stronger gallop also. Meanwhile, the winner is to the outside in the Shadwell colours, just sat there, just off the pace. Brentford Hope taking them along in the red cap, and he's in the right place to strike, and indeed he strikes first, and he gains an advantage over Bedouin Story, which that horse cannot reel in the closing stages. Final time was okay, it wasn't too bad considering that they crawled early on, 1:52.03. It could have been better really if they'd gone more of an even gallop, but they did crawl somewhat and it turned into a sprint, which is on now. Mostahdaf just got a flick down the neck, he's just hanging to his right a little bit, but he does absolutely nothing wrong. He backs up his recent success at Sandown Park, and if you look at his career, he's won 5 of his 6 races to date. He never really wins very impressively, but he keeps winning, and the only time he was beaten was when he encountered very firm ground, and that's not what he wants. He wants good ground or just a little bit easier than that, and he's away from the favoured rail. Finest Sand gets to that rail. It would have been better if he could have got to the rail, Mostahdaf, but he couldn't. He had to challenge out wide. But he's got first run on Bedouin Story, who's charging now. He's got the white cap. He's coming with his run, but it's all too late. You're not going to run down a horse off these fractions that's picking up in the closing stages. Very hard to catch Mostahdaf, given the circumstances of the race. And Mostahdaf runs out to be quite a ready winner in the end, you'd have to say. He's done it quite nicely. I think he could be quite a nice horse going forward next year. He could be a decent 4-year-old. So how do we sum this up? Well, we've got a winner who is steadily improving, I think. I think there's a bit more to come from him. He's backed up his Sandown win in game fashion. He did gain first run on some of his rivals, particularly Bedouin Story, but that was a good effort from Mostahdaf. Steadily run race, there's absolutely no doubt about that. It didn't suit Bedouin Story, it didn't really suit Khartoum, although he didn't really perform, and it certainly didn't suit the well-backed Barney Roy. Barney Roy did shape okay. He had a lengthy absence to overcome. They obviously thought he was straight because he was pretty well backed, but he really needed a stronger gallop to go at. Mostahdaf, 5 out of 6 in his career, only defeat on that really fast ground that he encountered last season. Just a little bit of ease suits him ideally. Potential Group 1 horse for next year? Well, possibly. I think he's going to have to improve if he's going to become a Group 1 material, but he's lightly raced, just had those 6 runs, and there might be a fair bit more to come from this fella next season. Well, we've already looked at some good 2-year-old performances at Newmarket over the weekend. Here's quite a nice performance at York now. Canonized, winning for Tom Marquand and William Haggis, whose horses remain in very good form. This was the Rockingham Stakes, listed race, 6 furlongs. Ever Given was favourite at 5-2 and Canonized 7-2. 11-2 Witch Hunter, and it was 13-2 and bigger the rest, and it was Canonized who got the job done under Tom Marquand, jumping out of stall number 5. We'll send them on their way and see how this race panned out. I think it was quite strongly run, and I think it was important to be away from the stand side. The 2 principals raced over on the far side. They are Canonized in the blue cap and Witch Hunter in the green and white stripes. Tom Marquand getting a little bit of cover on Canonized, who's had a good few runs, but only 2 runs at 6 furlongs. This is the second run at this trip, and I think it really does suit her. She travels very strongly through this race, and although she's had a few runs, she is unexposed at this trip, and she finds plenty for pressure. This soft ground on Saturday at York, and she sees the 6 furlongs out really well, which opens up the possibility of a trial for the Guineas, perhaps over 7 furlongs next season. Nell Gwyn, perhaps. Would be a place that they might have a go with her. Now you can see the 2 principals right to the outside of the track. The winner's here and the second is there. Make a note of the 4th horse home. I think is a 5 furlong horse, Ever Given. Travelled really strongly through the race, was the last off the bridle, but didn't see it out in the conditions. And perhaps wants to come back to 5 furlongs. But that horse has been running really well in big sales races, etc. And he gives the form a fairly solid look. Now Canonized knuckles down under Tom Marquand and gets the better of Witch Hunter in pretty good style and wins by just over a length in the end. Breeze Easy was back in 3rd, Never Given was back in 4th place. A horse who is one to keep an eye on back over 5 furlongs. But I just think Canonized is improving a little bit. William Haggis has got her going forward now, particularly over this 6 furlong trip, and she's one to keep an eye on. We might well see her again before the end of the season. So what did we see there? Well, we saw a pretty useful filly, I think, and not just useful, she's tough as well. She really knuckled down for Tom Marquand. He had to get pretty serious with her in the closing stages. She's improved and is unexposed at 6 furlongs. I think that's the key point about her. She's fast enough for 5, but I think 6 really suits her. This was a tough 6 at York on Saturday, given the conditions, so surely she'll stay 7 as well. Plenty of useful types in behind. It was a pretty strong race on paper, although they finished very well strung out. I think that's because of the ground, but I think the form is pretty solid for the grade, which of course was listed. Haggis and Marquand, what a season they've had together. Tom Marquand is riding brilliantly, in my opinion, at the moment, and William Haggis has utilised him to tremendous effect this season. And William, well, he does what he always does. He's had a great season, 142 winners and a strike rate of 25% in 2021. That is very good indeed for William Haggis, and he's not finished yet, I have no doubt. That's Canonized, winning at York on Saturday afternoon. Well, that's it for the verdict this week. I hope you enjoyed looking back at what happened at Newmarket on Future Champions weekend. A nice race at York as well. 2 really good 2-year-olds we saw at Newmarket, Coroebus and a Native Trail. They head up the market for the 2,000 guineas, and we saw a brilliant time performance, a solo time trial from Suhail. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.